All right, Dad, nowadays more than ever before, you need to be prepared when you go in to buy a car. We've got two great examples of how you can negotiate a great deal on the front end, but ultimately things can go awry on the quote back end with financing. I thought I'd show you these two examples and we can talk through them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a reason they call it the back end, buddy.
Not keen on what you just said, but this first one comes from Miles. It was an Instagram DM. He says, "Hey YAA, I stumbled across your videos about a month ago when I started looking for a new car and signed up on YAA shortly after. After using your tools to look for the car we wanted, a 2019-2020 Nissan Pathfinder, we narrowed it down to one in our area. I got the quotes and financing options from the dealer. It all looked fair, and I could see that they didn't add any dealer-installed accessories. Great. I had asked what their buy rate was from the bank for the interest rate to make sure they hadn't marked up the rate. They hadn't marked it up and showed me the actual approval from the bank, and what the bank said they could mark the rate up to. My rate was 3.49%, and the dealer could mark it up all the way to 5.9. Great, I knew I was getting a fair deal. What felt even better was that the car salesman assumed I really knew what I was talking about regarding car buying from that point on. They didn't try and upsell me on anything. Yada, yada, yada. Big moral of the story here, Pops, is that the dealership could have marked up that interest rate. He said it was almost over 2 points.
2.5 points. Yes, the bank would have allowed them to mark it up 2.5 points, and 2.5 points on a let's assume the Pathfinder loan might have been about $35,000. Well, 2.5 points on $35,000 probably would have created a reserve profit in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $4,000 for the dealership. So you need to ask what the buy rate is. Recognize the fact that the finance person or the salesperson doesn't have to necessarily share that information with you, but the fact that you ask might shock them enough that they would. And then if they do share the buy rate with you and they do want to mark it up, and they're allowed to because this is called indirect lending, the bank gives them the approval and they are allowed to mark the rate up. That's perfectly legitimate and perfectly legal, but your job would be to negotiate the rate of the markup, or, as Miles did, negotiate a deal where there was no markup, which ultimately saves you a considerable amount of money, because it lowers your monthly payment.
Now it's a good time to let everyone know we are actually working on partnering directly with credit unions. You can get on the wait list if you go to joinyaa.com, click on the little finance or refinance tab, put your zip code in so we know where you're located, and we're partnering with credit unions in your area so that we can offer buy rate lending directly through credit unions. Because if you're not confident like Miles to say, hey, I want the buy rate, which he goes on in his Instagram message to mention that the salesman had never worked with someone before who knew what a buy rate was. If you're not confident in doing that or negotiating like you were describing, Pops, you can at least get a pre-approval, and know that it's a buy rate. But this is a huge negotiating area in today's world, especially, Dad, as for used cars. Like, we can negotiate on the front end a little bit, and with new cars, this is even more true. You can't really negotiate. Okay, but on the back end, when it comes to financing, this is a perfect example of how a deal can go kind of sideways quickly. But Miles perfectly exemplifies the need to ask for buy rate. The same thing exists, Dad, for lease deals. 100% the same thing exists for lease deals. We have a YAA community member sent this in. This is not a car deal that a community member actually went through with. They sent it in to us to show us what's going on in the market right now. This is for a lease of a 2021 Jeep Gladiator, Pops. We've got 36 months.
2021 lease Gladiator? A
Jeep
new one?
Gladiator. I mean, you said a lease Gladiator. That's a new brand.
A
new.
Yeah. A 2021?
Yep.
How could that be?
Remember we talked about it beforehand? A 2021 Jeep Gladiator, Dad, 10,000 miles a year, 36 months. Now, Edmunds has an incredibly interesting tool. Actually, before I go to Edmunds, I'm going to say the lease payment here is $1,078 a month. That seemed just from the jump, Dad, a little suspiciously high, didn't it?
Well, not a little. A lot high. Yeah, I mean, extremely high. Yeah, almost overdose high.
So here's the deal. When you lease, Dad, keep me honest here, you have what's called a money factor. The money factor is essentially the interest rate on the lease, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So we went to Edmunds. We plugged in all the values from the deal worksheet into Edmunds, and we got the residual value that they think it's worth and the base money.
And this is for a 2021 Jeep Gladiator.
You are spot on, Pops. Yes.
Well, I just want to,
So what we decided to do here is decide to figure out how the hell could they have gotten to a $1,078 a month payment. And you can see on Edmundsted, they have the credit tier section. So if I've got excellent credit, the estimated payment here would actually be south of $800 a month. And that's because the money factor is 0.00183, which is about a 4.4% APR. If I had fair credit, so maybe I'm not tier 1, but I'm tier 2, the money factor goes up to 0.00246, a 5.9% APR, an estimated monthly payment of about $860. The only way you end up here, Pops, at a $1,078 monthly payment is either you have truly the worst credit possible, at which point you're not getting approved for a lease anyway, or the dealership is marking up the money factor, correct?
Yes. And the dealership, dealerships are much like they can on a loan. They get the buy rate from the lender, or in this case, the lease company, and they're allowed to mark it up. And for instance, with the BMW and Mini, when I was with them, we could mark it up a maximum of 100 basis points. So 100 basis points is a lot of money, even on a lease. So yes, the dealership is probably doing two things. One, they're probably hiding some additional selling price somewhere on their lease, and two, they're inflating the money factor to make more money on the back end. So because you can see it's virtually impossible to be able to get a payment of $1,078. So somebody's trying to take advantage of somebody somewhere. And thankfully, this member looked at that and saw how ridiculous the payment was and decided to pass. Thank goodness.
So especially as interest rates are rising, you're probably, if you're going to buy a car, you're going to see more and more examples of what we're showing here today, which is, well, interest rates are going up, so we have to charge you more. Or on the lease example, the payment's what the payment is. We can't help it. No. A lot of money is currently made. A lot of money has historically been made in finance, whether it's auto loans, home loans, personal loans, whatever it is. And the transparency that needs to be there currently isn't. So the best way that you can arm yourself is to look in the mirror and say, buy rate, buy rate, buy rate. And then when you get to the dealership, say buy rate, buy rate, buy rate, have pre-approvals, and just ask for it. Because look, it's going to save you thousands of dollars over the lifetime of that deal.
And even if you don't know what buy rate is, just the fact that you're saying it is going to make them believe that you do. So, there's that old saying, if you act like you belong somewhere, well, then you belong somewhere. So play the part. Act like you know what the hell you're talking about, and they'll probably fall for it.
Love it, Pops. All right, hopefully this has been educational for some folks. Friendly reminder, Deal School, join yaa.com/Deal School, 100% free, probably more applicable than ever before right now. Please watch that before you buy a car. Hopefully this helps as well.
Absolutely.